Now I'm doing two pretty fun things at the bench today. First thing, I'm tying with emu. Now an emu, that has to be about the ugliest bird in the history of all birds, but they do have some pretty cool feathers. And the second fun thing I'm going to do is, beginners take note of this, I'm going to be experimenting. And I know some of you veteran tyers out there will be familiar with this pattern, particularly if you fish in the Great Smoky Mountains or anywhere in the Appalachians. The pattern is the Yellerhammer, or one of the flies in the Yellerhammer family. And the one I'm experimenting with is the Yellerhammer Nymph, which has probably been around in one form or another since the mid-1800s. And the fly got its name from the yellow flicker bird, which is kind of a woodpecker, but it has been endangered for a pretty good while, so we're not tying with yellow flicker feathers anymore. Today's tyers will typically use something like a quail or dove feather, but they will split it. And if you've ever tried tying with a split feather, you'll know it is hard to do. So that's where I'm cheating a little bit. I'm tying this one with emu. So maybe technically we shouldn't call this thing a Yellerhammer. It's more Yellerhammer inspired, but either way, it was a fun one to tie, and I can't wait to give it a try. So there it is in the vise, just an easier version of the original Yellerhammer Nymph. Because this is not a Yellerhammer, Yeller flicker feather that we're going to be wrapping. We're using emu. All right, now these are pretty big. This is a size 10 standard length barbless nymph hook, and I am going to weight it. Don Kirk said this was optional, but I think it's pretty necessary. I'd want to fish this thing kind of deep, so let's put a good bit of weight on it. Almost the whole length of the fly here. Now we're going to use some black thread. I believe this is a 140 denier because my 70 denier spool was getting a little low. 70 would be just fine on this, but I think 140 will be as well. So I'm going to put some wraps over it, kind of ramp it up at the front and the back just to get a smoother transition here. And the tail in Don Kirk's book, golden pheasant tippets, one of my favorite tailing materials. This is a whole feather here. What I'll do, just grab the tips, reach in here and snip a dozen or so, maybe 10 of them. And you can pull the big part of the feather out. Now this will keep your tips aligned. So I'm going to go with a kind of long tail. You know, I think that's going to be fine right there. And if it starts pointing down on you, which that is, you could lift it up, put a wrap up under it if you didn't want it pointing down, but I really don't mind. I don't mind it pointing down at all. And now for the fun part, the emu feather. This is a natural, it's kind of a light brown, and the one you saw in the vise at the beginning, it was wrapped with this. But I'm going to mix this one up just a little bit. I'm going to try some olive. Now, I don't know if it's going to look much different, but I think it might. I think it's going to look, you know, kind of cool. We'll see in a minute, I guess. So what I'll do here, just strip some of these off, get a little bare stem here, and then catch this in way down here at the back. Now, I guess you could try to orient this feather in here so that when you wrap it, they're going to naturally be pointing back. I never really have any luck doing that, so I'm just going to catch it in, and then if the barbs end up going forward, I'll just preen them back with my fingers. I think that'll be just fine. So that's what we're going to palmer up. But before we do that, we're going to catch in some yellow floss up at the front. Now, this one, I believe it does. Most of them you do see, they have a yellow body. That's not why the fly is called a Yellerhammer. It's because of the bird, the feather that we used, or they used to use back in the day. So I'm sure you could do any color body you wanted, but I think it's going to look good with yellow, certainly with this olive emu feather. So I cut it in up front so I can get 2 layers down and back, because remember, this floss will be a little bit translucent when it gets wet, so you do at least want a couple of layers. So I'm going down, then I'll go back up front, and might do even more. We'll see in a second, but I'll speed this part up because it's going to take me a minute or so to get this laid down. Okay, I think that's going to be enough. Let's go ahead and just catch this off. All right, we'll take a couple extra wraps. Let's straighten that back up. We're going to catch it off right there, leave room for our head. Now the moment of truth. Let's just wrap this up, palmer it up. And I think as close together as you want to make them, or as far apart as you want to make them. All right, before I snip that off, I'm going to go ahead and do my head. Let's spin this clockwise so it doesn't spread out too much on me. And we'll make a big head, kind of, I guess as big as you want it. It is a nymph, so don't be afraid to put a big nymph head on here. Let's whip finish it, and we'll take care of that the rest of that feather there. All right, and there we go. Let's just pull this forward and snip it. And that's kind of a mess. You can lick your fingers, pull these back if you want, or not worry about it. Put some head cement on it, call this thing done. So there you go, just a new take on the old classic Smoky Mountain fly, the Yellerhammer. Now I appreciate you watching, everybody. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.